Welcome to the meeting of Warwick District Council on 12th of November 2025 at the Town Hall, Royal Leamington Spa. My name is Naveen Tangri, Chairman of Warwick District Council. I will now read the emergency procedure. There are no planned tests for the emergency alarm. If the alarm does sound, everyone present must leave by the designated exit route via the main reception. If the preferred route is blocked, use the nearest signed alternative route. Do not use the lift. Everyone must assemble at the designated point, which is on Regent Grove. Members of the public and press should report to a member of reception team who will be wearing yellow fluorescent jackets. Councillors and officers should report to the committee officer. Please do not re-enter the building until the fire officer advised that it is safe to do so. As a part of the Council's commitment to reducing the use of paper, councillors and officers may use electronic devices during the meeting. Apologies. Item 1. Apologies. I have apologies for the absence of Councillor Collins and Councillor Milton, Councillor Will Robert, Councillor Sam, Councillor Hema will be running late. Any other apologies, please?
Did I hear Councillor Day in that? Councillor Tangri.
Okay. Any other?
Just to say that Councillor Williams and Councillor Yella Pagada should be here but may be late.
Thank you. Item 2, declaration of interest. I'll ask the monitoring officer to provide some guidance in relation to predisposition and predeterminations. Members, are there? Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I just thought it was worth reminding Council, but also for the members of the public watching, in terms of predisposition and predetermination on this application. Obviously, you have considered application on this matter. You considered this previously in July, where you provided a view of the Council in terms of your broad view overall, but you're now considering it again afresh. Some councillors may have considered this at other authorities, where you would have considered other information, not the information in front of you tonight. You would also not have considered the debate which you are having in front of you tonight as well. So therefore, what I'm making sure, and I'm looking for nods of general agreement around the room, is that you're all open-minded to actually listening to the debate within you and the papers in front of you before coming to any conclusions this evening. I'll be offering similar advice as well to Cabinet, because obviously Cabinet are the ones taking the decision in the meeting after this, where again, they will have further consideration before making that final decision and making the submissions before Council. Does that help, members? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Graham. Are there any declarations? Councillor Melrose?
Just to declare, one of the authorities in the Strategic Authority Pact mentions Berkshire, and I work for one of the authorities there, so just to declare it.
Thank you. Are there any more? No? Thanks. Item 3, minutes. To approve the minutes of 22nd October Council meeting. Please, can I have a proposer and scanner for the minutes of 22nd October Council meeting? Councillor Davison, Councillor Knight, seconding. Thank you. Item 4, communication and announcements. I would like to remind councillors that this is a common courtesy to notify me as chairman if you will be leaving early or arriving late for the meeting for me. Since we last met on 22nd October, I have attended 6 events in my capacity as chairman, including attending the Warwick Remembrance Service last Sunday. It was a beautiful service organized by Warwick Town Council that saw our military personnel and cadets take part in the parade. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all past and current servicemen and women that fight to protect our country, and pay my respects to those that have sadly lost their lives during service. Will you all join me a minute silence in honor of these brave individuals? Please stand for a minute silence. Thank you. Item 5, petitions. I can confirm I have no business on the agenda under item 5, petitions. Item 6, notices of motion. I can confirm that I have no business on the agenda under item 6, notices of motion, and I'm grateful to councillors who did submit motions and understood the reason why I asked for these to come to our meeting in December. Item 7, leader and portfolio holder statements. I confirm that as chairman, I have agreed that there will be no leader and portfolio holder statements. Questions to the leader and portfolio holder. As chairman, I have agreed that there will be no questions to the leader and portfolio holder for this evening. Item 9, cabinet report, local government reorganization. We are now moving on to consider the cabinet report on 12th of November 2025 in respect of item 3, local government reorganization, along with the comments of the overview and scrutiny committee on 11th of November 2025. The purpose of this report is for us as council to pass comment to the cabinet ahead of them taking a decision later this evening. Before we move forward, can I assume councillors have read the report on the cabinet agenda, the addendum circulated on Friday, 7th November, and the comments from overview and scrutiny committee yesterday? I will now ask Chief Executive, for members' benefit, to remind us of the decision we have taken earlier this year and what decision we need to make this evening. I would also appreciate it if we could update us of any decision taken on LGR by other councils in Warwickshire, which are not detailed in our report.
Thank you, Chairman. So in terms of decisions you have already made on this particular issue, so if you, and I apologise to those members who were at overview and scrutiny last night, because hopefully I'm not going to say anything different to what you heard, so my apologies for the repetition. But in terms of decisions you already made, you'll be aware that all the local authorities in Warwickshire received a letter of invitation to submit proposals for the reorganisation of local government in Warwickshire. That was in February of this year. We were all requested to submit an interim plan by towards the end of March. A request for one interim plan had been submitted, but as you will probably recollect, a typical British fudge, and we had one interim plan which had two plans within it. So we had an interim plan for a single unitary council for Warwickshire, as prepared by the County Council, and an interim plan which proposed a two unitary council approach, north and south, largely by the borough and district councils. That went under one joint letter so that we complied with the government's request to have one plan, even though in fact there were two. So we did that, we got feedback, and on the basis of that feedback, 4 of the borough and district councils, including this council, considered the issue in principle in July and made a decision to support in principle a two unitary council approach. So that was true for North Warwickshire Borough Council, Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council, Stratford upon Avon District Council and Warwick District Council. Rugby Borough Council has as of yet not made a decision on either of the cases, though I now understand it is has lined up a meeting, I think it is for the last week in November, and they will consider both cases and make a, well, hopefully will make a decision one way or the other. I have no indication of which way that might be. So on the back of the July decision, what you also agreed was there were a number of things that we should be doing in terms of preparing the detailed submission, and that included engagement with the community, which has been undertaken and has been reported to you. There was other work which we outlined in that report back in July, which has been undertaken and is amongst the papers that you have now before you tonight. And you are at the point at which this is not the final decision, because the final decision ultimately is that of the government, but it is at this stage the final decision of this council, of this stage of the process for local government reorganisation. We all need to make a formal submission by 1 minute to midnight, and the government has been very clear. The deadline is 1 minute to midnight on the 28th of November. So, hence, you have before you a draft submission for your consideration, and amongst the recommendations, that's obviously the principal decision for you to make. In terms of decisions of other councils, I think I have within the report referred to the decision already made by the County Council at both its council meeting and more recently its cabinet meeting to support a single unitary council for the whole of Warwickshire. Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council, full council meeting, considered the same, the case, I think it was the 30th of October, and it decided unanimously to support a two-unitary case. That is being referred to their cabinet tonight, so they are meeting tonight. It's the same kind of a constitutional arrangement as we have, just they're doing it a number of days apart. But it's effectively, I'm led to understand that the cabinet will simply rubber stamp the decision made by council. Of course, that's without any predetermination whatsoever. That's what I'm led to understand. Stratford-upon-Avon District Council, make sure I get that right, Cabinet considered the case on Monday morning, and it approved a two-unitary case. Their constitutional arrangement is the other way around from everybody else, so it's gone to their cabinet first, and I understand it goes to their council meeting early next week, but with obviously the recommendation from cabinet to support a two-unitary approach. And far be it for me to suggest any predetermination on behalf of the whole council, but one can probably see the direction of travel in terms of a decision there. North Warwickshire Borough Council, because that actually still operates under the non-cabinet system, has again a slightly different constitutional arrangements, and it is considering this issue and the submission next week and the week after. There's a separation between council and their equivalent of cabinet. It isn't called cabinet because it works under different regulations. So those are the four councils who are involved or have been involved in the submission, preparing the submission that you have before you tonight. As I say, Rugby Borough Council have not been involved in either case. They're aware of both cases and have had drafts in order to help make a decision, but they had appointed a separate consultant to help them, as I understand it, to evaluate what they should do. So that is the position in respect of all of the other local authorities within Warwickshire. In terms of other updates, at the moment we have only one letter from an MP in the county, which you have as an appendix. I am reliably informed by my colleagues in the north that the MPs covering North Warwickshire and Nuneaton Bedworth will also be writing letters in support of two unitaries, as will the MP for Stratford on Avon. I have had a communication just today from Sir Jeremy Wright as a follow-up, because I did a chaser reminder, because we have asked for a letter, and we may try and get a meeting in order to see if we can get a written response. I have had a verbal response, but in fairness, I can't really share that, because in fairness, but I would smile. Which would only leave the Rugby MP to respond, and I think that would probably generate a different facial expression from me if I led to believe where he might go. The only other thing to add verbally is that at a meeting with the Mayor of West Midlands, he did indicate verbally, and apparently is prepared to put it in writing, that notwithstanding his position about membership of the combined authority, so making a distinction here, he would support the two-option approach for Warwick. That, I think, covers all of the kind of, if you like, institutional partners that we would have expected to give comments. You have the comments, I think, from other key organisations, so police, fire service, ICB, and so on. So I think, probably, Chairman, that's probably enough for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, having consulted with Chief Exec, I'll seek to manage the debate as follows. Firstly, I'll ask we note recommendation 2 to 6, 9 to 11, and 14 within the Cabinet report. Members should be mindful that recommendation 1 is for Cabinet to listen to comments from Council. In a few minutes, I'll ask for it to be proposed and seconded. That we note that proposed and seconded. Opportunity should anyone wish to make a comment regarding one of these recommendations and the appendices they reference. I would therefore like Council to focus on the following recommendation to Cabinet individually, being mindful of the points I have mentioned. Recommendation 8 is Council still of the view that 2 unity authorities to replace the current County Council and 5 district boroughs. Recommendation 12, a number of important areas of internal work to support the delivery of LGR, but very importantly provide support for staff and help to focus workload. Recommendation 13, in respect of neighbourhood area working, is there any further guidance the Council wishes to provide to Cabinet ahead of the further report Cabinet will receive on this? Recommendation 15, in respect of the assurance from government that in the event of a decision to support a single unitary council for Warwickshire, the County Council should not be granted continued authority status. In recognition of the comments from Overview and Scrutiny Committee recommendation 7 that says Cabinet notes and consider the assessment of options set out in Appendix 4 regarding the participation of new unitary council in Warwickshire in a strategic authority. I'm mindful that many of you will wish to speak on this important matter, and I remind you that council procedure rules only permit each of you to speak once on a motion that has been proposed. I will be monitoring this to see if we do need to suspend procedure rules to allow you to speak more than once. With all this in mind, I'll now ask for someone to propose that we note recommendation 2 to 6, 9 to 11, and 14. Councillor Davison.
Thank you. Can I propose those? I'd just like to say 1 or 2 words at this point. First of all, this has been a huge amount of work, so enormous thanks to many of our officers, particularly our Chief Executive, and you'll all also realise for the other 3 councils that we've been involved with particularly, so Stratford, North Warwickshire, Nuneaton and Bedworth. It could be said quite a few of these words are not our Chief Executives, but from other councils, so there's good partnership working there. There's one small but important error. So recommendation 10, it says Cabinet delegates authority to the Chief Exec to do the necessary administrative amendments to the final business case prior to its submission to Cabinet. Now that clearly is wrong, it's to government. So it's that single word change that I think, well, it's formally a Cabinet recommendation, but that is something I am making here. I won't go through all the notes, there's lots of background stuff, but just to say, to me, the key ones, Appendix 5, which is in effect the report that is going from Deloitte's on behalf of these 4 councils to government, if this is approved, and the Appendix 2B, the People 2 one, is an important background as well in terms of adult and social care and SEND, how to get those as good as possible. I won't say any more, but happy to try and answer questions that might arise if if there's any debate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong, on behalf, sorry, you seconding?
I can second, yes.
Thank you. On behalf of, oh, sorry. Oh. Responsible. Okay. On behalf of Overview and Scrutiny Committee, are there any comments you want to make a recommendation on 2 to 6, 9 to 11 and 14, which are to note? Councillor Armstrong.
Do you mean for me to comment on the ONS scrutiny? Was that okay. So no comment on these recommendations. I'll come back on the other ones where there's more relevant comments.
Anyone else want to speak on this? Councillor Collier.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just very briefly, recommendation 2 talks about the public engagement exercise, and I think it's right that we just note it and don't particularly debate it, but I think it's worth just drawing attention to the fact just how wholeheartedly it was in support of the 2 unitary option. So I think, assuming that we do go down that route, I think there's no doubt that we have the public on our side.
Thank you. Councillor Syson.
Sorry, it was just a point of order. Many of us could not hear what Councillor Armstrong was saying, and I do think it's important tonight that people speak both clearly and slowly, particularly for the benefit of members of the public who may be watching, and also, even more importantly, for us.
Thank you, Councillor Syson. Councillor Armstrong.
I am happy to repeat, but I said no comment on that point, and that was effectively it.
It would be lovely if you could repeat it, please.
That was the repetition. I just said no comment.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments, please? Councillor Bode.
Yes, it's more on what the Chief Executive said about rugby, that it's not decided until late on, like pretty close to submission date. What's the implication if they say they want to go for the 2 unitaries? Because my understanding is if they did go for the 2 unitaries, they'd want to come south, and that really messes everything up.
Chair, if I may, obviously if rugby were to decide to support the 2 unitary approach, but were content to go into the north, then basically the only issue is just adding their name to the document and variation, because within the submission document, we have kind of assumed anyway that rugby would be part of a northern unitary. So we've made an assumption because we have to address the whole of Warwickshire. You can't address just part of it. That's keep it, and the government were checking that we were addressing the whole of Warwickshire. So if they go for a 2 unitary and they want to go in the north, it's a graphic kind of amendment issue. I think you're right to highlight that if they were to propose that to support a 2 unitary but to be part of a southern unitary, there is no necessarily a commitment that for ourselves and the other 3 councils that we have to accept that. So effectively, I would suggest that where they would be left would be having to make their own submission. So in the context of it, there would actually be 3 submissions. That's what they would have to do, because I cannot see that there is enough time for all of the other councils to consider it. And I think you don't need to be Albert Einstein to work out that in terms of the balance of numbers and everything else, that rugby being part of a southern unitary really doesn't work. So I think you would end up with there simply being 3 submissions. In other parts of the country, actually there are far more options in terms of how local government reorganisation may pan out than in Warwickshire to date. Warwickshire, by comparison, is pretty simple. It's A or it's B. You know, there are at the moment really effectively only two options. So that would be complication for the civil servants because they'd have another option to consider. But I don't think that would be binding on ourselves on the other three councils because we've made a submission which is based upon 2 unitaries with a fairly reasonable split in the population. That would be my advice.
Thank you. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Chair. If I could add my thanks to those of Councillor Davidson for all the staff effort in producing all these papers for tonight's meeting. Just a small point on recommendation 14, if I may, which is one about communications to partners, the wider resident and business community. If I could have some reassurance that that also includes the voluntary and community sector as well within that, many of whom deliver services across the county.
Thank you.
Chair, yeah, happy to confirm. I mean, I think that obviously it's kind of shorthand. We obviously need to let everybody know, in a sense, what the decisions are and keep them informed as we go through the rest of the process.
Any other speakers? No? Councillor Davison, say anything?
Thank you. I won't say more on that, but recommend these recommendations as laid out with that one-word change, that government, not cabinet. Thank you.
Any seconders? Councillor Bode.
Yes, I only a comment for the executive to consider, or the cabinet rather, that the people to report was very clear that social services and children's services could be split. They didn't need to be one body. And I think the thing to take note of is if we're working on this, the opportunity will be there for re-engineering the services to best practice and to get them to reflect the current, what's happening in the current systems and how they can be improved. And I just note that Warwickshire Children's Services have been shown to be, by the recent Ofsted, to have dropped from good to requires improvement. Clearly things could be changed and improved, which 2 unitary councils will provide that opportunity to look at that. So I think that's important.
Any other speakers? You want to say, Chief?
Chair, can I just draw your attention to something which is in the addendum, just in relation to recommendation 15, just in case members weren't aware of it. There is a suggested rephrasing of, I know, but I'm just, whilst we just understand that, in case that gets lost.
Thank you. Grace. Can I take a vote on this now? Can I ask those in favour of the recommendation 2, 6, 9, 11 and 14, please? I think it's anonymous. Thank you. Sorry, you're against. Sorry, one. Thank you. We now move to recommendation 8. Is Council still of the view that 2 unity authorities to replace the current County Council and 5 district boroughs? Can I have a proposal? Councillor Davison.
So I will propose as it's set out there. As I said at ONS, my view, although technically it's a cabinet decision, whatever's decided here is what I would certainly recommend to council, to cabinet to agree. Won't say more now, but if things come up, I will at the end.
Second, Councillor Bode.
Thank you. The only note on there is the implications of 1 or 2 unitaries. And it's really the democratic deficit that you're likely to get. Because the government, as I understand it, made it very clear that the maximum number of councillors is 99, which means that if you had a single unitary, you would have 99 councillors replacing the current 257 councillors. That, to me, is not improving the democratic deficit by one bit.
Any other speakers? Councillor Matiski.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The future of local government in Warwickshire is a decision that will define how we serve our communities for generations to come. I want to start by saying that my personal preference would have been for a two-unitary model. I believe it could offer more localised governance and greater responsiveness to the district needs. But personal preference alone cannot guide us. We must be led by policy, practicality and common sense. The government's criteria for local government reform are crystal clear. The first criteria sets out that any new unitary authority must serve a population of at least 500,000 residents. The proposed two-unitary configuration in Warwickshire falls at this first hurdle, as it does not meet this threshold. The government has indicated that exceptions may only be made in cases of special circumstances, which would need to be evidenced. To date, no such circumstances, or should I say special circumstances, have been identified or evidenced by those supporting a two-unitary model. So despite my personal leanings, I cannot support the two-unitary model. It simply does not meet the requirements set out by central government, and we have no credible basis to argue for an exemption. And let's be honest, we have already spent enough time and money chasing an option that does not meet the brief. Every day and every pound spent on an unviable model is a day and pound taken away from delivering real improvements for our residents. To put it plainly, if you went to a car showroom and said you needed a car that seats 4 people and they offered you 2 two-seater cars, you'd laugh them out of the showroom. That's exactly what we're doing here, pushing for something that simply doesn't fit the specification. We've seen this play out in Surrey. There, the debate was between 2 unitaries of over 500,000 population each and 3 unitaries of around 400,000 each. The arguments for 3 smaller unitaries were compelling. Strong local accountability and democratic representation, avoiding the remoteness of larger councils, alignment with natural, economic and social areas, tailored services and better engagement with local needs, support for cohesive economic regions and stronger business partnership, a balance between efficiency and localism, prioritising community identity over maximum cost savings. Doesn't all that sound familiar? Yet, despite these arguments, the government chose the two-unitary model, one with 550,000 residents and the other with 650,000, because it met the criteria set out in the letter sent to councils on the 5th of February. Some have raised other comments about a single unitary model, particularly around issues like council tax harmonisation. But again, all these challenges would also exist under a two-unitary model. In conclusion, while I respect the arguments for two unitaries and understand the desire for more localised control, the reality is that such a model is not viable under current government criteria. Without special circumstances and given the complexities involved, I cannot support a two-unitary model. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Modisky. Councillor Chilvers.
Oh, I assumed I was in a queue, Chair, but slightly surprised me there. So, yeah, I think this whole process is that the government is putting us through is incredibly damaging. It's taken us a lot of, absorbed huge amount of time and effort of our senior staff and leadership. And yet we actually know that whatever we say, the government will just get on and make whatever decision they want. And I think we should be very clearly saying to government and explaining to them the damage they're doing. And we're only at the start. You know, this is going to go on for years. There's a huge amount of further damage that's going to carry on and stop us getting on and delivering more efficient services for our residents. And basically, I think that us putting either a 1 or 2 forward is just playing along with the government charade. So I don't think we should be submitting a choice between 1 or 2. I think we should be submitting other details because we've got to get on and show what we would do. But I think by choosing, we're just playing the government, going along with the government's game, and we should be instead saying, no, what you're doing to us is really damaging. So I will be abstaining on this.
Thank you, Councillor Chilvers. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Councillor Tangri. much as I have a lot of respect for my colleague, Councillor Mateski, I do not agree necessarily with him. I'm also finding myself slightly agreeing with Councillor Chilvers, so slightly odd evening this evening. I think the word I used was, this is a bit of a mess, the reorganisation, the real impact on our officers who don't know what the future is, and I think we need to be aware of that. Just to add to the confusion, ministers recently, according to the Times, are understood to have reviewed evidence and accepted that more medium-sized authorities between 200 and 250,000 people may end up being the most cost-effective. If I can mention Surrey in particular, because I've spoken to one of the opposition leaders in Surrey, who happens to be a friend. It's a unique arrangement in Surrey because of the debts of Woking and one other, which are more than 1 billion each district council. And I think it's probably Spelthorne. I may have got that wrong, and apologies to Spelthorne if I have. So I'm not sure we can use Surrey as a good comparison of what we should be doing. However, I do support the two-unitary approach for being much closer to the voters, much closer to our residents, and being of a much more easy for them to understand and approach all the particular services going forward. But I would make one plea to Cabinet, please, whatever you consider tonight. Would you please ask the government to make a decision, not to leave us in suspense? My colleague in Surrey will do 6 years, potentially 7 years as a county councillor. If we're still here sitting in 2028 or 2029, it's because the government hasn't made a decision. So I would ask Cabinet and to put in there any submission that we want a decision, whatever that is, 1, 2, or whatever number they would come up with. I recognise it's the government's decision at the end of the day, but let's have one.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Gifford.
Yes, the government want us to provide evidence as to why we shouldn't have 500,000 or more for a unitary. But they provided absolutely no evidence that I can see as to why it should be 500,000. There are plenty of examples of unitaries in existence at the moment that have the sort of numbers that South Warwickshire and North Warwickshire would have. So Solihull, Coventry, the various London boroughs, they're all similar sort of size. In fact, most of them are smaller. If the government was being logical about this, it would be amalgamating Camden and Islington together, and it would be joining these to get them up towards 500,000. But no, it's leaving them in the 250,000 or thereabouts numbers. It isn't making any changes. It's not willing to really, it's as though somebody in Whitehall thought, oh, 500,000, that's a nice round figure. That should be better. That should produce bigger savings. And the bigger it is, the better it'll be. Well, we know, we just have to look at Warwick, to look at Birmingham to see that it isn't necessarily better by being larger. It has its own issues, but it isn't. But the size has not produced massive efficiencies. And Warwickshire does have some, the north and the south are very different. And I think that if you look at Appendix 5, it gets that across very well. It's a good report, I have to say. I'm pleased with it. Bits I would, knowing Warwick District much better than I know the others, I could go into great length about the local economy here, which is strong. If the rest of the British economy was in the same level as Warwick District, this country would have no problems. It would be one of the wealthiest. I think we're quite right to take the line of arguing the case for the two. We're quite right in that Appendix 5, we gets across the point that actually the two-unitary model would actually fit with the vast majority of existing unitaries. It wouldn't be out of, but if we had the one unitary, we'd be the third largest. That was something that I thought surely Leeds, Bradford, no, it's just Birmingham and Manchester that are larger. That was made me think this is a nonsense, and as it's a nonsense, we can't quite say that to the government that they're talking nonsense. But I have to say that they have provided no evidence. They want evidence. We're providing evidence as to why it should be 2 unitaries. They've provided no evidence as to why it's 500,000 and 1.5 million for strategic authority. I think we've got a bigger, we do have a real problem with the strategic authority because of, strange enough, because we've got so many options in some ways, but it all the goals partnership. And to me, the absolute logic would be to have a strategic authority that was Solihull, Coventry, and Warwickshire, and the 2 Warwickshire authorities. But we're not going to get that. But arguing our case is the right thing to do, and we've got good arguments there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whiteman.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, just like to say thank you very much to the officers for this paper. It's an incredible amount of work that's gone into it. It reads really well considering the complexity of the issues. It is really frustrating, and I'd just like to sort of share the frustration really that the officers across the country have been put to this much trouble. I think this is an exercise is a shambles, really. I think go away and make it up yourself. It's a local government reorganisation. But we'll put it all on the local authorities to come up with the solutions, and then at the end of the day, we will decide ourselves whether you've met our criteria, which haven't really been explained. We're not even discussing under this section the strategic authorities, but that is even more concerning, I think. The whole thing really, and I think as a local authority, we really should be giving that feedback that this is not a very satisfactory exercise. It has caused an awful lot of effort. It's taken an awful lot of resource clearly already, and we still don't know where we're going. So I'm deeply unhappy. I do understand the points made by Councillor Chilvers. To some extent, I understand the concerns, which I think are more with the process really from Councillor Mateki. But I feel as a council, we have an obligation here to come up with the best solution, that we have on the table for our residents. And I think the 2 unitary solution very clearly here has better outcomes for our residents. It gives an option that has it's probably the least worst option, if I could put it that way, but it has the least democratic deficit. I think as well, the single unitary has is it a £100 increase if we are standardising the council taxes to the top of the range with no extra service. That can't be a good outcome. I think the 2 options, the 2 unitary option is the best of a bad bunch really, and it's what we should be recommending. I think in terms of the population size, I think the Chief Executive said at Overview and Scrutiny Committee last night that actually the southern unitary would probably have, was it the 3rd largest population anyway of the existing unitaries? And I think in any event with projected population rises, there would be very real concerns here if we were to go with a unitary in a few years' time in terms of the size of it. So I think this is the best option on the table. I thank officers for putting it forward. I will support it, but I do also support very, very vehemently the criticisms that have been made of the wider process from the government.
Mr. Elliott, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to clarify that point, if Warwickshire County Council or the county area became a single unitary tomorrow, then it would be the 3rd most populous unitary council in England after Birmingham and Leeds. Strange enough, it would be bigger than Manchester. Leeds is about 800,000 population. Birmingham is 1.1 million. Far be it for me to cast aspersions on the performance of Birmingham in terms of in relation to its size. But you can probably hear the ... What I would say, the projections about population as well you need to think about, because we're talking about the population figures today, but as we know, population is not static. The projections are for by 2047, Warwickshire would have a population of just under 750,000 people. Each of the north and south unitaries would be in excess of 300,000, probably around 350,000 each. And just to put it into context, the average size of a unitary council in England is in the region of about 250,000 to 350,000. And if you're interested in why the figure of 500,000 was chosen, it was because it was a county council network report prepared in the year 2000, which suggested that that was the appropriate figure. That's the evidence for that figure, which the government has rowed back on since.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Councillor Fall? Sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. I did vote at the County Council for 2 unitaries, but I've looked again at the 2 submissions, and it's a bit apples and pears because county very much have come out, you know, we're going to make so much more, save us so much more money, where I think the district one is more about residents and closer, you know, working because, you know, well, if it's 2 unitaries, it'll be close to north and south. I've talked to my 2 colleagues, and you know, we are the Whitlash Residents Association. There's a very good reason why we've got residents in that title, and the residents' survey clearly says that they want a 2 unitary model. I'm a bit again with Councillor Chilvers. What a waste of time and effort and money. I think we do need to reorganise. It's always good to look at what you're doing, and there's a lot more things that we could do together. I was a little bit concerned originally about shared services, you know, what about the fire brigade, they're only small anyway, and what about children's services, etc. But there is solutions where you work together. You're not going to split up the fire brigade and have a north and south, you're going to have a Warwickshire Fire Brigade with north and south influence. So we are very different. We are very different. We have got very different needs, and it's right that the north should be able to concentrate on the needs that they have, and that we concentrate on the needs that we have. So, as I said, I did look again, because I did look at it as a county councillor, and I've looked at it again as a district councillor and a town councillor, and I do have reservations as a town councillor. A lot more will be coming our way if this happens, and that's fine as long as it's financed. Because most of us have only got part-time workers, and while Whitlash would probably want to take over the world, and constantly want to take over the world, we can't do it without support financially and more staff. So I will be voting for 2. I think my 2 colleagues will be voting for 2. And I agree, if they're going to do it, let's get on with it. Please don't make us wait. I don't think it'll happen. I don't think it'll happen in 28, I'm sorry, 27, 28. I think it'll be more 2030. But that's not fair on our staff. It's not fair on our residents. So if they're going to do it, please get on with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong, on behalf of ONS, are there any comments you want to make on recommendation 8?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so the committee supported the case for 2 unitary authorities, and particularly recognising the distinct areas that exist within Warwickshire. The committee particularly recommended to Cabinet to include some content around the 1974 past reorganisation and the difference in the housing market, but the general point was support for the 2 unitary case. Personally, I also support that and will be voting for it. I won't add to the arguments already made.
Thank you. Councillor Collin.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a couple of quick points. I agree wholeheartedly, unsurprisingly, with Councillor Gifford. I'd just like to make one point on the 500,000. We did put in our interim proposal that we were suggesting 2 unitaries. The government could have turned around and said that they would rule that out due to the population figures. They did not. So therefore, I think we absolutely should continue to make the case, because we believe that it is, that the North and South are different places, they have different needs, they have different priorities. Those are the special circumstances for why it is justified. Councillor Fount mentioned saving money. I do note that if we end up with the single unitary option, then I believe council tax will go up for every resident in Warwickshire. Even in the area with the highest rate, in Nuneaton and Bedworth, they will almost certainly institute a town council, and therefore theirs will go up as well. And everybody else, so everybody's will go up. It won't save any resident any money in that scenario. But it's not about saving money for residents, let's be clear. It's about efficiencies and trying to save the government money at the end of the day. That's why they're doing it. I agree with Councillor Whiteman. I believe we should be making a recommendation. It is the government's decision at the end of the day, but frankly, we know our place is better than the government. So we should be putting forward a full-throttled recommendation, I believe. And ultimately, for me, this is really a choice between one council trying to implement two strategies, one for the north, one for the south, or two councils, each focused on its own strategy. And that must give us a far better chance of delivering benefits for our residents.
Thank you, Councillor Hazelwood.
Thank you. I mean, like others, I'd like to thank the officers for all their work on this. I agree with Councillor Chilver's comments and Councillor Gifford and others. However, given a forced choice between one or two, a choice that may prove illusory, I fully support the proposal put forward. Councillor Mateki makes a good point that the business case must clearly address the exceptional circumstances that get us off the specification hook of a 500,000 minimum population size. At the moment, we can say that the specification is arbitrarily set. Why 500? I believe we have some strong arguments for two unitary authorities, and Councillor Bode makes a strong point about the opportunities to improve social services. I think that Surrey has recently made a case about exceptional circumstances. We need to be clear about how we address that same point as part of our argument moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Melrose.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to repeat some of the comments, but there's been quite a good discussion that I fully, wholly agree with. I just want to talk about the size, because I think that's been a very point that's been debated quite often. Obviously, if you look at the LGA, it's a guiding principle around the 500,000, but actually it's only one part of the criteria of a six-part criteria we have to fulfill. And I think one of the criteria which strongly sets why the case for two is that showing that council and the areas have sought to work to come together for you, and it is informed by local views. And I think we've seen, as Councillor Kohler put out earlier this evening, when the consultation came out, overwhelmingly people supported two. That, I think, has to be a factor in there, and that's why I'll be supporting two today.
Thank you, Councillor Barton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Without nitpicking too much, and yes, Whitnash do want to rule the world, which is probably why we're not on the map at all. We seem to have dropped off the map. Yes, I will be supporting two unitary. I think one unitary is too big, and by 2047 we will be one of the biggest in the country. What sort of worries me, when I started on this council, we were going through the amalgamation with Stratford District Council. I just wonder how Mr. Elliott thinks that the amalgamation, or whether we'll be able to get on this time, or whether we still will be arguing about whatever we were arguing about then. And also, it's such a long time ago. I was only young then. And the other thing is, we're in the second round of unitary, I believe. Do we know how the first round? Anybody know how the first round is getting on? Because one would assume that they should be going unitary extremely quickly around now if we're looking at 2027.
Australia.
I think in terms of reference to our experience of two district councils merging together, I mean, this is different. One, because it's forced. This is a decision made by government, whereas before that was a voluntary arrangement of two councils trying to bring together. And I think the other significant difference is it is not just Warwick District Council and Stratford-on-Avon District Council. it is also effectively half of Warwickshire County Council. So you're actually talking the bringing together of, if you like, 2.5 or 3 organisations in terms of their services. So I think, in fairness, it's a different beast. Although there are clearly learning experiences which are relevant, and I don't know if Councillor Dixon, because I can see him smiling, is going to ask this question and raise it, but, you know, organisational culture is one of the issues we need to learn from, and how do we do that? Because that, in my view, is where we did not succeed, if I can put it that way. And as everybody knows, I know some people don't like this saying, but culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, dinner, tea, midnight secret snack, quite frankly. And that's the key to success. In terms of the question about other unitaries, I have to say that from a professional point of view, one of the things that astounds me is the complete lack of research and evidence about the impact of unitarisation. So all any of us have to go on is the anecdotal experiences of particular new councils, and that experience is different. So, for example, I contrast it, not for any particular reason, but they're a good at either extreme in some respects. In Somerset, which is which was a single county, pretty kind of very significant financial problems almost straight away. I mean, we're talking about 100-odd million black hole in their budget. Contrasting, you know, up in Cumbria, which is Cumbria's in total was barely over 500,000 and has been divided into 2 unitaries. That seems to have had a beneficial effect. But the problem is none of that evidence is kind of properly researched or tested. So it's very much an anecdotal impact, and therefore you have to take it as such that you kind of hope, therefore, that everything will turn out well and we can learn the lessons. But I think that's what we have to do. Although if the government's timetable is to be attended to, collectively we don't have a lot of time in order to actually learn those lessons and put them into the implementation plan. And that applies regardless of what the outcome is for Warwickshire, whether it's 1 unitary or 2.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd hate to disappoint Mr. Elliott really on not speaking, or not Dixon not speaking about culture. I was going to save these comments for later on in the discussion regarding recommendation 15. But what I wanted to say is, and again, it's a big thanks to our officers, because I believe that the culture that we have in our district council is that of a can-do council. We've got officers that are really enthusiastic about projects and about developing things. And I believe that's because we're really close to our communities. I think as councillors and as officers, you know, we share this culture. I'm not so sure that that's the same for other councils that may be involved in this reorganisation. And I think it's much more difficult for the bigger councils. The point that I was going to make is that it's to have a smaller council, it gives us the ability of sharing the good points, the good parts of culture in creating a new authority. And I think when we're looking at the difficulties, as Councillor Barton said, about joining councils together, that's not what we're doing this time. We are creating new authorities, and that what we need to do is keep that as small as possible, in touch with our local residents, and making the best of the good points, the good parts of the culture that we've developed.
Thank you, Councillor Syson.
We all know we're special, and we all know we're different. I actually believe that Warwickshire is a special case. And we are different because of our peculiar shape and because of having lost Coventry some time ago. And that puts all sorts of constraints on us which do not apply in other parts of the country. And I reckon that up and down the country, there are a few authorities, but less than the fingers of one hand, where there are problems such as we have, issues, specialities, etc. And I would like to think, and I had heard a whisper once, not so long ago, that Whitehall does actually recognise that we are a special case. So I think, yes, the 2 unitaries, not 1, is the way forward, a sensible way forward for all our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ison. Any other speakers? No? Councillor Davison?
Okay, thank you. Unusually, I definitely don't disagree with anything anyone said here, or on whichever side that people have been, which is quite unusual, I think. I think we all agree that it is a huge amount of pressure put on by government, and the criteria are not clear and they can change their mind. And there are some cynical people who might think it's nothing to do with that. Words like gerrymandering come up and things like that, which is possible. I have no insight into those. So I believe that's true, but the question is, do we play the game or not? Do we make a strong claim for what we think is best for local residents? And my view is it is our duty to do that, even if we disagree with the game that has been put in front of us. We've got to do our best, because that's the way to try to get the best for local people here. There's some interesting things about, Councillor Matetsky's point about the numbers is absolutely right, except government announcements have sort of fudged it a bit, so it's not terribly clear. And as several people have said, there are quite a few other criteria, and if you require all criteria to be met, there is no solution. So it has to be that government will ignore some of their criteria. That's the way they've set it up. In terms of the argument, it's been well made that their reasoning for over 500,000 was they claimed it saved money, but the Appendix 3 DCN report and the People 2 report all are claiming smaller is better in this case. I would like to say a tiny bit about Councillor Kate Dixon's point about the amalgamation and can-do attitude. It's not good just to be, we're not going to get very much done. It's far better to go in with a positive mindset on this. And I think in terms of changing, and it is creating a new authority, it is not a merger between different ones. If it's created at a single unitary size, much of the focus will be on the district and borough services. How can we amalgamate them 5 into 1, which may well be a good thing to do, but it's roughly 1/10 of the budget. So any savings, you've got 1/10 to play with. Whereas if you go for 2 unitaries, the big thing you've got to do is a disaggregation of the county council services, which is 90% of the budget. So you've got the biggest chance for transformational change and savings. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Chairman, and I am suggesting people vote for 2 unitaries. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davison. Councillor Booth, to second recommendation 8.
No, I think it's all been said.
So shall we go for a vote? Can I ask who in favour for recommendation 8, please? Just one. Abstain. Thank you. Thank you. We now move to recommendation 12. A number of important areas of internal work to support the delivery of LGR, but more importantly, provided support for staff and help to focus workload. Can I ask proposal for recommendation 12? Councillor Davison.
Thank you. Can I propose again? I'm looking more to hear what people say. Just a couple of comments. 12B, the budget thing, we're certainly looking at that. How much money should the council put aside for this reorganisation? And that's in two ways. Staff to do the work in preparation for either one or two unitaries, and we're expecting there will be challenges with staffing if as it gets closer to the time, so we may have to pay more in terms of interims. F and G, you'll have seen there was a slight addendum for changing wording, and instead of should we spend money that we can or ought to before the vesting day, it ought to be completed before the 1st of April 2028 as they're feasible and good value for money. And this is to remind everybody that our duty is to spend money wisely, not to say, oh, let's have a party or anything like that. So everything has to be decided in terms of what's good. So we mustn't be making rash decisions. You may know once the shadow authority is in place that they can issue what I believe is called a Section 24 directive, which would then mean that shadow authority has oversight of our spend. They'll put a threshold, and above that we need to say, we need to ask them. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Davison. Councillor Armstrong, on behalf of ONS, are you seconding recommendation? Councillor Bode.
Yeah, I think this section is very clear on the nuts and bolts of how we get prepared. And we certainly need to do that. And I think the important thing is also looking at assessing the projects that we've got. Some we've got really long-term projects, which we might not do. There are others which may have a greater impact on the public, which maybe we can get those underway. So I think that work needs to be done to see what's there. So I would support everything that's in here, including, I'm glad we've got a big section on the staff, because they're the ones who have got the brunt of it. They're the ones who are going to lose the jobs. We might not be councillors, but they won't have their jobs. So we need to do the best for them, so moving staff appraisals forward makes sense.
Thank you, Councillor Bode. Councillor Armstrong, you want to make any comments on behalf of ONS? Recommendation 12.
Thank you, Chair. So on this point, members noted the timelines and that they were particularly tight, and also, again, wanted to highlight the sheer need for staffing resources required for the investment planning of the work, moving on to the next council. All the work involved here is particularly large, and that was one of the key points raised by the committee.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Fowle.
I just want to make a comment. We've got to keep our residents informed of going forward, because they will or may not know why things aren't being done as they were being done, or we can't do things. So just a comment, please. Residents got to be kept informed as much as we can all the way through this process.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Davis.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bode, for highlighting the impacts on staff. I think when we're discussing local government reorganisation, it's really important to recognise the impact that this will have on staff and their concerns. I want to highlight Chris Elliott's point earlier to our members of staff that may be watching this today, that the outcome of this meeting is to provide a recommendation of our preferred option to government. And at this stage, we do not know if the reorganisation will be on the schedule the government have put forward. So alongside our HR department, we will prioritise engagement with our staff to bring them on the journey with us. As outlined in the report on point D, should this be recommended, one of our priorities will be to review our people strategy to ensure that we focus on supporting our staff in the lead up to the transition. We want to make sure that our staff understand what is happening, and we want to answer any questions that they will have.
Thank you. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Councillor Tangri. A quick point, and thank you, Councillor Davis, for clarifying F and G. But on point H, what I think we need to avoid is that the reorganisation actually stops us taking decisions on things that we need to actually proceed with. and we don't use it as an excuse not to do something because the reorganisation is causing issues, whatever. And I'm particularly thinking of things like the stadium, etc. So I hope we don't use this as an excuse not to do things, and that the Cabinet continue pressing forward with what's right for our residents, at least from their perspective. We don't always agree, but I hope you will keep on pressing forward to make sure the residents aren't left in limbo for a couple of years.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Any other speakers? Councillor Dixon?
Thank you, Chair. If I could just follow up on the very good point made by Councillor Falp on this, on resident communications, and to remind members of lessons learned not from the reorganisation which we attempted in 2022, or even the reorganisation which did take place and then ended in a divorce with the Police Authority of Warwickshire and West Mercia, but of the changes that people voted on in June 2016. And one of the communications there on the sides of buses was about £350 million being saved. If we can avoid that sort of thing and be very clear with people about what is happening and when and the reasons for it, I think that would be really good.
Councillor Barton?
Thank you, Chair. I might need to ask Graham if he needs me to be quiet and not say any more, then please tell me. It's regards F&G about projects. If I declare an interest, do I stop now? Or do I ask a more general question?
I think through you, Chair, it'd be better to ask a more general question rather than talk about specific projects because they're not referenced in the report overall. You're looking at the concept tonight in terms of delivery.
This council has a number of projects that haven't been started and have been on the back burner, front burner, middle burner for a very long time. Will these projects that we've been talking about to various community groups, do you think that they will be committed to before 1st of April 2028?
Sorry, Councillor Chilvers?
Thank you very much. Yes, I was going to respond to Councillor Phillips' point, which does kind of begin to bleed into what Councillor Barton was saying. But so on the services front, that, you know, I think Councillor Phillips makes an extremely important point that, you know, whenever vesting day is, whatever year, whatever happens in the future, those services will need to continue. And we want to make sure that we are providing as good a service as possible for our residents. And that ultimately is what matters. And therefore, we should not in one iota of a way be making any excuse because of reorganisation that we shouldn't do something about making our services work better. And I want, like from a finance point of view, I want to send a really, really clear message that we want to carry on investing to save, we want to carry on improving our services to provide better value, better services. On the projects, to speak generally again from a finance point of view, again, I think we would, you know, we've got some timelines in there and we want to keep, we've allocated funds and we want to keep moving forward on those projects. And we are, you know, I'll let other colleagues talk about maybe some of how that plays out. But, you know, from a finance point of view, I want to keep delivering to the schedule that we've set out.
Thank you, Councillor Chilvers. Councillor Collar, on recommendation, please.
Just very briefly, I just want to make the point that the impact on staff will not be on vesting day alone. It will carry on for many years afterwards. And I think the more we can do to manage the expectations of our staff, then it won't be a surprise, and et cetera, et cetera. So I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Davison? propose?
Thank you very much. Again, excellent points made. As Councillor Chilvers said, there are no plans at all to stop any services that we're doing. It's in terms of projects and, if you like, redevelopments and change. But we do want to leave the council in as good a position as possible. And I was very surprised recently, our chief executive quoted Gareth Southgate, I think, which perplexed me. But it was something like, you have to plan years ahead knowing you may get sacked tomorrow. We don't think it's going to happen quite that quickly, but there is a chance that this won't happen. And so we have to plan that we're carrying on, we're making things as good as possible. I've certainly taken note of Councillor Phillips on the previous bit about, please make a decision, government, but we don't know whether they will and when they will. So there's a very good chance it may get, say, delayed a year, or it gets shelved and then the next government does something. So we have to look to make things as good as possible. I also think that's fair on staff, because which we won't, if we take the foot off the accelerator and just sort of tread water, that's not good for them, that's not good for career development, and what they're going to, they're then, when whatever comes next, they're in a less good position. But if we're transforming, making things as good as possible, that really helps. And sorry, looking at Councillor Phillips again, a huge priority for this council is for housing to get a good score. We're obviously aiming for a C1, and I think we'd all be pleased if that's the case. So that's the main bit. The other is when it's not long before Cabinet comes in 2 weeks' time. The agenda is enormous. I'm not sure if it's 20 items or something. There's a huge number. So we're not slacking off in any way. The corporate strategy review is a time where we are saying, should we knock one or two things on the head? I hope there's nothing in there that you think that's a huge shame. There may be one or two bits, but we'll see in terms of whichever you're referring to, Councillor Barton, whether they're in there. So this in many ways is the most important of the recommendations here, because this is what we can actually control. This is what we're doing to prepare and to keep services running well, both for residents and our staff. So I'd recommend being in favour of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Board? All right, okay. Can I take a vote on this? Those in favour of recommendation 12? Those against? No. Abstentions? No. Thank you. Thank you. We now move to recommendation 13. In neighbourhood area working, is there any other further guidance the council wishes to provide to Cabinet ahead of its report back? Can I ask the proposer of recommendation? Councillor Board.
Thank you. I think the important thing here is this is where we're dealing with the local communities, the very small bit. And what I like to do is to actually put a few bones on this as guidance. And I'd like the Cabinet, in discussion with parish and town councils, identify which current services they may be in receipt of or none, because the small ones may not have any, to identify the size of the issues that may need to be addressed. So it's actually gathering the information so that the Cabinet can actually analyse it. Do some parishes receive no services at all? And the more important question is, what do they want to take on? Anything or nothing? I think we need to understand that so we can actually come up with the programme to deliver what's required. It won't be a common result, I don't think. There will be different. Some way it won't take anything on. So I put those ideas forward.
Thank you. Councillor Davison.
Thank you. Can I second and reserve my right to speak?
Thank you. Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair. And I
welcome Councillor Bode's comments. I think this is really important. I'm starting from the principle of subsidiarity that looks at political issues should be dealt with at the most immediate or local level that is consistent with their resolution. But in our case, whether we get one unitary or two unitaries, it's going to move all the decisions further away from the people we represent. And we have 20 parish councils, 1 unparished council and 4 town councils in our district. The elected local authorities and tier of local government, which is closest to the people. And I know from experience in Kenilworth that the town council and its mayor play an important role in community cohesion and well-being, drawing people together and helping to make Kenilworth, and I'm sure the same applies in other towns, a great place to live, work, study and visit. So whatever the size and scope of the new unitary authority, it's vital that the strength and identity of our town and parish councils is maintained and enhanced so that people can continue to feel that things are being done for them and with them and not to them, and that they can feel a sense of belonging to their community. So in following up on this recommendation, I'd ask that the Council, in preparing a report, as Councillor Bode has suggested, to consult widely and to learn from best practice elsewhere and make recommendations for effective working between the new unitary and our existing local councils for the benefit of all our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Armstrong, on behalf of ONS, you want to make any recommendation on recommendation 13?
Thank you, Chair. On this point, the committee had 2 points to raise. The first was to be mindful of the concerns from some parish and town councils that they would have services put upon them without the funding commensurate to that service, and just to be mindful of that going forwards by the new unitary. The second was to acknowledge the risk to the whole principle of local government reorganisation, which has the apparent point of simplifying responsibility for service delivery from 2 tiers to 1 tier. If parish or town councils then start to get a significantly increased number of responsibilities, you can argue that that simplification has gone right back the other way again. And so it was to acknowledge that risk as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gifford.
Thank you, Chair. If you look at towns and parishes that have in unitary authorities, they vary. The smaller parishes, there's not that much, the village parishes, there's not a great deal of change, but the towns, considerable change or difference between them. Salisbury, which is a parish, despite being a city, it's about the same size as Leamington Spa, but its result is because it's almost taken on the district council's responsibilities without taking on housing, planning or licensing. But it's got virtually all the rest. And its charge, its precept, if I remember rightly, is about 3 times the Warwick District Council's on a Band D property. It's taking about £300 per Band D property. And that's quite a difference. Kendal is much less, and they vary tremendously in what they've taken on, how they've taken it on. Now, that's something that the town council particularly are going to have to consider, but also the new unitary authority is going to have to look at. What it might be, the negotiation that goes on with it, but also at the moment, of course, the town and parish precepts are not capped. There'll be a temptation to, whether you've got capping on the larger the unitary authority will no doubt remain capped. There'll be a temptation to divest itself of things like parks and gardens and so on, which may be good, but will certainly come with a cost. But and it will also involve the whole thing of contracts and so on, which could be quite complicated. but we shall see. It'll be interesting to see. But again, it may produce a much better service, possibly, but I suspect it'll come at quite a cost if it does.
Thank you, Councillor Gifford. Councillor Bart.
Yeah, thank you. This is probably the most important one for a town council. I do take Councillor Gifford's point about legal bills, etc. Whitnash is a little bit special because we used to get concurrent services for the services that we provided before the district took that money off us. So what my point basically is, I think from a town council's point of view, we would prefer a two-unitary because I feel, and I think my two colleagues do, that we'll be closer to a South Warwickshire unitary than a whole unitary. So again, this is another reason, and I believe for all the other parishes and town councils, why we should go for a two-unitary and stay in the south.
Thank you. Councillor Barton. Councillor Chilvers.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I support this and I really welcome Council providing this recommendation or additional advice around preparing, you know, what town councils and parishes would want to do. And I would urge town councils to do that, start that work now, so that we're a long way down the road by the time whatever decision is made. Just a cautionary tale from Cornwall, which is one of the ones that became unitary the earliest. There's some actually really, really good stuff around where parishes have clustered together and they did stuff on parking, which was really locally appropriate and ended up sort of helping parking issues and raising an income for the parishes. It worked really, really well. Another one where a large town in Cornwall, the new unitary looked at all their leisure centres or their leisure facilities, and they identified one in this town which was loss-making, and so they thought, right, we're going to make a saving, we're going to close it. So the town council went, do you know what, we're going to take this on because we want to keep it. So, of course, they had to put up the precept to do that. And then what, of course, they noticed is that people were travelling from out of the town who weren't paying that extra through the precept. They were in a parish and coming and using this facility that was still open. And people started saying, well, this isn't very fair, is it? Because people in the parishes aren't paying the precept that's supporting it. What we need is something a bit bigger than a town council, but smaller. What about something like a district council? And so it did kind of come full circle in situations like that. And I do think we need to be quite careful considering what what towns take on and what we do. But I do welcome towns and parishes bringing forward ideas over the coming months.
Thank you, Councillor Chilvers. Any other speakers? Councillor Philip.
Right, thank you. This is probably the aspect I worry most about on the reorganisation. I represent probably the smallest parish council in the district, from 130 people, and we've got towns of, well, I guess Leamington must be 50,000, something around that. Is Councillor Bode's nodding, and it seems to be the least clear aspect of what the government is wanting to do. I think we have to be aware that while I would say certainly the town councils are more professional in terms of they have perhaps staff as well, these small parish councils are entirely voluntary, and they are already starting to talk to me about, well, what does this mean for me? Will I want to do this? I don't know, I want the extra responsibility. And these conversations have been going on for 2 or 3 months more now, and we don't have clarity. So I welcome what's in the recommendations here, and I hope that will be reflected in the Cabinet's thinking in terms of how we suggest that we move forward in Warwickshire, or in Warwick District anyway, for our parishes, because they do a lot of good work, but we don't want to lose that good work by overburdening them.
Mr. Elliott.
Can I just give a point of information on this point, which cropped up at scrutiny as well? Parish and town councils are independent sovereign bodies. They cannot be forced to take anything unless there is primary legislation which imposes it upon them. So, understanding the fear of parish and town councils, but actually they have the power to say, no, we're not going to take anything on. And that's probably part of the discussion that I think you're wanting to have. So that it, in a sense, it is a voluntary act between two parties, in this case, between a unitary council which might want to give up something, and between a parish or town council which wants to take on something. Now, and that will not be the same answer across the 20 town and parish councils. It will be different, but I think as a point of reassurance, if it is a reassurance, formally and legally, unless there's a change in legislation, you can't be forced to take anything on. There might be a weight of expectation, and this has happened in other unitary areas. I think as Councillor Chilvers has given one example, but there are others where in effect what has happened is that the precept for parish and town councils is being used as the make weight for how you address some of the service issues. That's just happened again, anecdotally, no research, but that is there, and is something also for town and parish councils to think on. The belief that actually taking on a service is going to come with money is probably optimistic.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Chair. I, on the District Council, represent a large spread out rural ward, but I also have the privilege of serving on Kenilworth Town Council, which has been a very informative experience. I think inadvertently in this discussion we're lumping together the town and parish councils as though they're the same entities. They're both tier 1 councils, but they're actually completely different in terms of the aspirations and what they do and what they want to achieve. I just wanted to make a brief point, if I may, about accountability. The town councils in the district all hold contested elections. So if we devolve powers down to them and something goes wrong in the delivery of those services and residents are upset, the solution is that they can boot out whoever was responsible for things going wrong. There's a clear line of accountability because the elections are contested. Can't say that about the parish councils in the rural areas. They're not holding contested elections. And we do have, well, some parish councils do an excellent job. We've got people serving 20-year terms on some of these and not having to go back to an electorate. So I think I'm happy as a Liberal Democrat to see parish councils doing more and taking on more services and making sure that decisions are taken close to those that they affect. But I think that's got to be tempered with some kind of accountability measure. If we do that, we need to be having a recruitment drive to have more people come forward as parish councillors, to just get some of them in the rural areas over that threshold for holding an election. That way, if something goes wrong with a waste collection contract in somewhere in the countryside, people have got a choice over who is sitting on those rural councils representing them.
Mr. Elliott, please, come in.
Just again, point of information, just need to be clear. All parish and town councils can have elections. It is just that in some cases they're not contested. I have to say, as being returning officer, I have had the privilege of being the returning officer for parish council elections, and even joyously had to do a tied vote, which I enjoyed very much. I'm more than once. But just to make that clear, now clearly there is an issue about a lot of parish councils don't have enough candidates to get to an election, but I just wanted to make it clear legally, it is not the case that they don't have the capacity to have elections. We just needed more people to stand in order to create them. So just to be clear legally.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Any other speakers? No? Councillor Davison?
Okay, thank you. Again, very little to dispute here. A lot been said about town and parish councils taking on roles, Clearly, that would have to be a decision that they take. There is no requirement to do that. Councillor Bode is suggesting this council facilitates that, and our chief exec has talked to many of them already, so engaged with them, but I think it's fine to try again and go an extra mile and see if that's possible. There's been a strong case of saying that realism is really important, so I think that we do need to bear in mind, and our officers do need to do a bit of a sense check if people say they're going to take on loads of things to work out that it's reasonably viable. So I think we'll be happy to help on that. Just to be clear, this point also references a neighbour. Well, the government's phrase is neighbourhood area committees, and certainly a previous minister had said that's the way that they were going to go, and there was nothing else about town and parish council, so there's nothing going to them. But we haven't had clarity on what those mean, and clearly this bit will carry on for quite a while. When we know more about what the government's intentions are, we can feed that forwards. But on that basis, I'm seconding it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bode.
Thank you. I think it was an interesting discussion to have. I think it's important because we're all assuming the parishes want to do things. They may not. And the crunch comes when the parish either takes something on or they don't get the service, which is happening in parts of the country where the unitary can't do it. So either the parish does it or it doesn't happen. So I think we need to understand very clearly about what the aspirations are, what the capabilities are. That's really broad. What I'm trying to do is broaden out the discussion so you can see what is realistic. And it will need to look at what's the capabilities. My suspicion is that certainly 3 of the town councils can probably do things. There will be some other largish councils, and Whitnash maybe, who are already doing things, may want to do something else. And there'll be others who say, don't want to do it. And I just had tipped off to me that if you went for Salisbury sort of situation, that parish council has 80 plus employees. I'm not suggesting we want to go there either. So a useful discussion.
Thank you. Any other speakers? No? Can I take a vote? Those in favour of recommendation 13? Those against? Any abstain? Thank you. Just informing Councillor Elizabeth Leaf. I don't know why. Recommendation 15, that Cabinet seeks a reassurance from the government that in the event of decision to support a single unitary council for Warwickshire, the county council should not be granted continued authority status. Can I take a proposal on that one?
Before you ask that, I am a county councillor, and on everything else, I can separate the two. On this item, I don't think that I can with the recommendation that's laid out there, and therefore I'm going to excuse myself from the debate and the vote.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for letting me know. Councillors Davison's
So
proposal.
just as a point of information, there's an addendum, so can you read out the recommendation in the addendum?
Mr. Leach.
Through you, Chair, at the moment we've had no proposal in front of us, so what I'd be looking for is the proposer to read out the revised words in the addendum when they come forward. But you are right in drawing our attention, there is that bit in the addendum. I missed that off the notes of the Chairman.
Councillor Davison.
Thank you. As you've seen in the addendum, it now reads that Cabinet makes representation to and reassurance from government that in the event of a decision to support a single unitary council for Warwickshire, A fair and proportionate joint committee and joint implementation executive of all existing councils is established, rather than WCC being a continuing authority. This approach recognises the importance of establishing a new organisational culture involving parity of councillors and staff from all councils, and will better ensure a true partnership approach to facilitating a smooth, efficient transition. This approach should also apply in the case of two unitaries being the chosen way forwards. So that's the recommendation as it stands. I think it's relatively self-explanatory, because if there's a single unitary, you could envisage it as a county council absorbing everybody else, and that's not a partnership, it's not a discussion, it's fitting into the current model in a way. And if we're looking for transformational change and efficiencies and savings, that's not a great way to do it. So it's asking for a partnership approach of everybody getting involved. And I should say, so far, things have gone well. So data has been shared with county, and although we've disagreed, we've had pretty decent discussions. Thank you, and I'm proposing that.
Can I take Councillor Booth, you seconding? Thank you. Councillor Armstrong, on behalf of ONS, are there any comments you want to make on recommendation 15?
No comments on this one, Chair. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Councillor Booth?
Yeah, it's just the bit that's not been taken up, and I'm not sure whether it applies. But if you have a county council which wishes to continue, which is the option, I can't remember what the terminology is, but it's their option, and they have to pull the districts and boroughs into it, we still want to have a say in that, and an equal say. Otherwise, it's a way of just rolling us over.
Thank you, Councillor Booth. Any other speakers? Councillor Chilvers?
Sorry, could I just ask the monitoring officer to confirm that, so I'm also a county councillor, and as is Councillor Foup, just your view on whether you're comfortable that we can vote on this one?
Through you, Chair, thank you for that. My understanding of the position of Councillor Matetsky is essentially he's saying he's predetermined on this one and can't move past that point. That's why he's abstaining himself from this vote. In terms of yourselves, all county councillors and town parishes have dispensation to participate and engage, particularly on local government reorganisation, to make sure you can represent the communities you are elected to represent at this level, unless we are in formal disagreement with that council, which this is not the point. That would be a formal legal proceeding, which we are not. It's just they're coming to a different conclusion than WDC, potentially.
Thank you, Mr. Leach. Any other speakers? Councillor Gifford?
Yes, as a former county councillor, I spoke at a county council meeting some years ago about unitary, and I pointed out that unitary is a new authority. It isn't the county council taking over the responsibilities of district councils. It is a new authority, a different authority. Whatever the boundaries will be, whether they be two unitaries or one, it is a different, a new authority. Whatever the name of it will be, it is not the county council. It is a new authority, and that is absolutely vital that the county council and their staff and the councillors realise that, because otherwise there's a vast amount of the costs of the unitary are going to be in what is now under the responsibility of the county council. Looking at savings is something where the county, it's got to be looked at as a new authority, not as the county taking over the council tax that the districts and boroughs provide and say, oh, we can make some savings here, we'll sell off the Victoria Park or whatever and get a bit of money. It's got to be seen as a completely new authority, and that's, so I totally, strongly support this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Gifford. Mr. Elliott?
Chair, I was just wondering whether or not we actually addressed, I think the technical point that Councillor Bold was raising in relation to a continued authority, and I would just, in terms of the wording of the recommendation in the addendum, it does include the phrase rather than Warwickshire County Council being a continuing authority. So it's advocating an alternative approach to the continued authority designation. The continued authority is a legal designation which in effect would be in a case of a single unitary, because it will only apply in that case. Effectively, the continuing body would be the county council. It might be that the county bit gets dropped off the name, but that's what it would, at the beginning, would mean. And this proposes something different, which the government have said they will, in any case, seek representations upon, because they have not decided, in any case, whether or not continued authority status would be granted for any form of local government reorganisation. And legally, you can only have continued authority if the new unitary has exactly the same geographical footprint as an existing council. So, for example, if Warwick DC were to become a unitary, arguably Warwick DC could become a continued authority, but not necessarily advocating, but that's the geographical basis. Sorry to be technical, but just so you're aware.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Any other speakers on recommendation 15?
Just query that. On the continuing, we've covered a single authority and two authorities. What we haven't done is actually cover the continuing authority option, where if that comes forward, then the county would be sorting out what services and how it's delivering those services. And what I want to make sure is that we have an equal say in there, similar to what we would have on a single unitary.
Sorry, just to be clear, Chair, that there is not another separate status here. It is, in this case, that the continued authority is an option for the single unitary. So it's not another option, it's just how that single unitary would be implemented. So if you can imagine it, it's option 1, option 2, whether or not you... So if for the option of a single unitary, there are 2 ways to do it. One of which is every organisation gets thrown out and you start afresh, which in effect is what the recommendation is proposing. The continued authority is the other variation, which says, well, if we go for a single unitary, you've already got the same geographical footprint, so basically the existing organisation is the mainstay of that and is effectively in the driving seat for what the new unitary becomes. So the recommendation, I think, does address that particular point, because it's saying we want to do this and be a true partnership and not this.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Councillor Davison.
No further comments from me, thank you.
Councillor Bode.
No, done my bit.
Can I ask who in favour for recommendation 15? Those against? Abstain? Thank you. We now move to recommendation 7, that says Cabinet notes and consider the assessment of options set out in Appendix 4 regarding the participation of new unitary council in Warwickshire in a strategic authority. Can I take a proposal on this one? Councillor Davison?
I will propose it. I'll just say, if you look at the appendix at the bottom, there's a summary from our Chief Executive on the options. There are quite a lot there, but if we go through them, it will take a while. So I won't say anything at this point.
Thank you. Councillor Bode? Mr. Corning?
Yeah, I'll come in early so it might shape the debate. It won't be easy with the obvious candidate for the best fit is West Midlands. Well, that's not an option. Clearly Rawness House has not been interested in doing that and don't wish to extend. Unless you have a mayoral election, then things may or may not happen. But it might not be what we want to do anyway, if you consider that there are, I think it's 6 authorities that could well gang up on Little Warwickshire and take all the money. So there's things to discuss. We should at this stage, I believe, not rule in or out any possible options. Warwickshire must not be left alone. That's the crucial thing. It has already been stated by the government that Warwickshire is too small to be a strategic authority. So it's not possible, even if there's 2 authorities there, that you could have a strategic authority. Given the assessment in Appendix 4, North and South Unitary Councils could perhaps pursue seeking the possibility of joining different strategic authorities, given the stark differences of the needs of the unitary councils that we have currently. So it could be, and only it could be, that if it was a 2 unitary authority, South may be, because of special circumstances, be able to go south, and the North may be able to go north. So you could potentially have a South Midlands strategic, depending on where you want to draw the boundaries, and a northern one, as well as the West Midlands central one. So it's, all the options are available, but we need to do something which does locate us somewhere and not on our own. And it's really saying all the options are off the table. We can look and see what's coming about and what partner associations, organisations want to come in with us or not. So it's a slightly different way of thinking, perhaps more radical, perhaps, if you had a much bigger area where maybe you had as far as Gloucestershire going south and Oxfordshire going east rather, then you could actually have quite a big authority which could compete with the West Midlands, or in fact probably be bigger than the West Midlands and probably more financially secure. So that's what I want to do, is to try and just widen out those options and not box us into anything at this stage.
Thank you, Councillor Bird. Councillor Armstrong, on behalf of ONS, do you have any comments on recommendation 7?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there were just 2. The committee encouraged more work to happen quickly on the potential options, and also asked that steps should be taken to ensure the future of the West Midlands investment zone, which I believe the Chief Executive and Leader assured us would not be an issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers on recommendation 7? Councillor Matisky.
Yeah, just a quick clarification, really, maybe from Mr. Elliott. I didn't think that there was an option for, if there was a two unitary option for the North to go one way and the South. I was pretty sure that the criteria was that whether you have 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 unitaries, that the whole county had to be considered as a whole.
Australia.
Thank you, Chair. I did actually seek clarification from civil servants on this particular question, because I'd heard that as well, but I have never seen it written. The response I got, which I'm quite happy to share with everybody, was that the civil servants' view of the government's position, which is actually what I thought it was, which is that it is down to us to try and come up with a solution, whatever that solution happens to be. I just say I'm happy to share that. There's no. It is clear in the sense that what it does not say is basically even if you go north, south, and Warwickshire, you're still stuck with each other. It doesn't say that. So I think there is greater latitude than the view that I have heard expressed, which is whatever happens, even if it's 2 unitaries, the Warwickshire authorities have to stick together in a strategic authority. That's not what the response actually says. I would say I'm happy to share that.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Any other speakers on Councillor Melrose?
Thank you, Chair. This was part of the debate. I think I was most interested in hearing people's thoughts, because I think we discussed this in July. The West Midlands Authority is, you'd think, the logical choice, and you had a blank map. It's probably where you'd probably put us, or with Coventry and Solihull. That is not the case, and how I've used the algorithm is and I know there's been repeat questions asked of the Mayor and of West Midlands, would they not take us, but accept a proposal, and we're hearing no. So we need to have, I call a plan B. I will put on my other hat on and my role in the LGA Public Sector Reform Board. Because local government reorganisation's taken so much oxygen in the room, there is people, when it comes to the Mayor's strategic authorities or strategic authorities, it's still in limbo. So you have some councils who are just burying their heads in the sand, covering their ears, and hoping it all goes away. And then you've got, on the other side, councils starting to talk to each other. Could we potentially form a strategic authority, and what would help unlock if we all work together? So I think at the moment we have to be as flexible as possible, but I think with a two-unitary option, that opens up the doors a bit more towards, with us, we're looking at the south, because I think without the West Midlands, there is not one strategic authority I can see that would align with every single 5 district parts of Warwickshire. If we said we all had to go to Leicestershire, it might work for Rugby, but it probably won't for us. If it's Worcestershire, it might work for Stafford, it probably might not work for North Warwickshire. So I think the two-unitary option gives us the best room to find somewhere, because there is criteria for strategic authority. There's the economic, there's travel, and I know Councillor Cole has shown us loads of maps of the travels, so I won't go there, but there's also place. What could work for us? And I think this is the bigger, I wouldn't say prize, but we need to think what's going to work for us as Warwick District, but South Warwickshire potentially, because this decision is going to probably be the decision for the next 50 years. And looking around the room, I don't think any of us would be here in 50 years when they reorganise it.
Thank you, Councillor Melrose. Councillor Fall.
Yeah, I did vote at the County Council to go towards West Midlands Combined, because as a single unitary, I could not see any other option, because, there isn't any other option, and it's the option that I think everybody agrees that we're best in. But Councillor Mateki might remind me, but I don't think the other option was, Councillor Chilvers, no other option was put forward. County Council said West Midlands Combined, yes, okay. So they are burying their head in the sand and saying, well, it's West Midlands or we'll have to be our own strategic authority, which we don't agree is correct. So, but I did vote for that, because to me, a single unitary makes absolute sense. I'm not sure West Midlands want Warwickshire, but, at the time, that is the most sensible solution.
Thank you, Councillor Fowle. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Melrose is right. This is a really important recommendation that's here. I'm interested to hear Mr Elliott talk about his discussions with civil servants. And I just wonder whether he's got any indication, and this may ask him to look in the crystal ball, as to whether there is a possibility that the government, either next summer or maybe in October, announces a decision about unitarisation, but defers a decision about which strategic authorities are put in place, and separates the two.
Thank you, Chairman. My infamous 5p bet on this is that, rather like Surrey, because we'll get an announcement about unitarisation, but no indication of strategic authority. That's my 5p bet, if you wanted to kind of put a balance of probability. The Surrey is a good indicator, because Surrey as a whole is over, it's about 1.1, 1.2 million in total. And I think because there was a consensus that the county council was going to effectively be subdivided, that actually there was a local consensus that the area of Surrey would become the strategic authority. And I understand, although it's kind of, if you like, it's gossip, but I think there was a disappointment that there was a very clear announcement about what the unitary councils would be, but nothing at all about what the strategic authority would be. And I think that's probably a good indicator. So, 5p bet, no strategic authority when we get the decision.
Councillor Gifford.
Yes, Appendix 4, the conclusion there, I think actually says it all. Two unitary authorities keep open more options for joining any single strategic authority, as they offer the opportunity for North Warwickshire Unitary to join with Leicestershire and South Warwickshire to either join with Oxfordshire and Berkshire or Worcestershire, Herefordshire, possibly Gloucestershire, whilst also retaining at this stage the opportunity, this is what I would like to see, the opportunity of joining West Midlands Combined Authority or of forming a joint committee as strategic authority in its own right. Now, I mean, it's the fact it's got all these, we've actually got too many options. You know, Cornwall probably only had the one, but we've got loads. But that conclusion basically says why, another good reason why we should have the two unitary authorities rather than one. Because it actually makes the whole issue of strategic authority much easier to deal with. And that doesn't make it's going to make it easy, it's easier.
Thank you. Councillor Gifford. Any other speaker? Councillor Kohler.
Thank you, Chair. I note that this is it's the only part of local government reorganisation that involves devolution. This is the only bit, and it was the devolution white paper. And I think for what it's worth, I agree with Mr. Elliott's 5p bet that the solution will probably be no solution. And that's because going by the government's own criteria, Coventry is integral to whatever we do. Whether you look at travel to work data, economic data, health boundaries, whatever you look at, Coventry and this part of Warwickshire and northern part of Warwickshire, it's integral. I also note that the government's priorities can probably be summarised as growth, growth and growth. And we have an investment zone, which is half in Coventry and half in Warwick District. And whatever you think of it, to improve it, to bring it forward, it will take collaboration between the two. So if that investment zone is split between two strategic authorities, again, that seems to be hampering the government in what it's trying to achieve. So I also note that the government bill that's going through Parliament will give the Secretary of State the power to redraw the boundaries of combined authorities. So with that in mind, I think we should be encouraging government to engage with us, to review the issues and to help to find a solution. I don't think it will happen otherwise.
Thank you, Councillor Kohler. Any other speakers on recommendation 7? No? Councillor Davison?
Okay, thank you. At last, I have a difference of opinion with probably everybody in the room. So first of all, Councillor Cole is absolutely right. This is the devolution bit, and in theory, money that is held by central government will be transferred down to strategic authorities and combined authorities with mayors on top, and they will make strategic decisions, which we hope will be marginally better because they're done a bit more locally than the central government approach. It's also, I tend to agree with our chief executive that this seems to be in the long grass at the minute. We haven't got a timetable, and therefore, given electoral cycles at government, there's a good chance this won't happen. But this is part of what it's about, and we should be thinking what would be best for us. And this then gets to the usual, what are the criteria? And several of you have mentioned functional economic geographies, a word to that effect, which, again, Councillor Cole is absolutely right. It has to involve Coventry for both north and south if we're involving that. But that's not the only criterion. Councillor Melrose mentioned, well, I think you said place, but I think it says identity. And to me, putting that aside, well, using that a bit is, we need to decide what's best for residents here, what's best for businesses here, how does a strategic authority help us? And I'm coming more and more to the opinion that being in the West Midlands Combined Authority wouldn't help us. because we'd be joining a club of very urban councils which have huge challenges and deprivation and a culture of spending money on them, quite rightly. So I can't see us getting much of the pie at all there if we joined it. So if we had a choice where to join, I think we should be looking to join areas that are more similar to us. So Oxfordshire and Worcestershire, hadn't heard the option of having both of those as possibilities together, but those sort of places have the same successes as us, very successful places, and in terms of the West Midlands, South Warwickshire is one of the highlights. A lot going, a lot of high tech and a lot of positivity about here. So it's better to go to more similar places because then the strategic authority is looking at how to help people like our residents and businesses like ours. So that would be the way I would be suggesting. I don't think it's worth it at the minute putting it in a recommendation, partly because I probably haven't convinced many people here, but more importantly, I haven't convinced our colleagues in the other districts and boroughs. Certainly those in the north are very much, we want to be in the West Midlands, we want to be in the West Midlands. So unless that mindset changes, I think that would be a debate for another day if we know we're in two unitaries. If we're not, the decisions are very different, because I agree with our chief executive, we couldn't be going with Oxfordshire if it's got Atherstone and Coleshill there. That just wouldn't be fair. So in summary, I propose this recommendation as it's set out.
Thank you, Councillor Davison. Councillor Poole?
Nothing enough's been said?
Thank you. Can I take the vote on this? Those in favour of recommendation 7? Those against? Abstain? Thank you. Item 10, appointments of committees. To appoint Councillor Collins to the Audit and Standard Committee to replace Councillor Dre, and to appoint Councillor Knight and Dre as substitute to this committee. Can I take a proposal? Councillor Melrose, seconding. Anybody seconding? Councillor Knight. Can I take a vote on this in favour of these appointments? Anyone against? Abstain? Thank you. Item 11, Common Seal. The last item of the business of the agenda is fixing the Common Seal as set out on agenda. I'll propose this from the chair, and I can see Councillor Davison and indicating seconding this. Those in favour, please. Against? Abstain? Close the meeting. Thank you very much.